the kind of the moment in the pub when you went, do you know what? I'm going to start a podcast.
I was playing around with this idea for some time before 2020. But the thing was, I'm an executive in life science companies. I help founders growing their businesses into hopefully IPOs or sound acquisitions.
Yeah.
And in the B2B environment, basically before 2020, nobody was interested in doing podcasts or anything on social media. The general reception, whenever I tried to push in this direction, the general response I got back was, we do serious business. The
Right.
internet, my friend, is for kids. And what should I do? I mean, you
Interesting.
just can go with the flow and don't pursue some ideas when there is no market. Then the pandemic hit. And in March 2020, I think the first lockdown was in Austria. It was around March 16, 17.
Yes. Yes.
And a week later, there was the Bio Europe in Paris planned. Bio Europe is one of the largest gatherings of the pharma industry, life science industry, digital health, and everything around that. And meanwhile, also artificial intelligence. And people were confused because, I mean, nobody in the industry, or almost nobody, had any experience with Zoom calls or video calls,
Yeah.
podcasting, social media, but they still had the need to engage with people, to connect. And I just used the dynamic in the industry. Bio Europe went digital, went virtual. They had a lot of Zoom calls. I saw that sometimes when someone opened a camera on a very old laptop, the camera was pointing upwards in their nostril. So basically, it was not a very nice picture. And I said, let's just train it. Let's just try it. When we have a conversation anyways, and we are on Zoom now, I record it, I publish it on LinkedIn, on some podcast platforms,
Okay.
and eventually maybe something comes out of it.
But are
It
you
went,
enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it very much.
That's
I
all that
mean,
matters. I think as long as you're enjoying it, I don't think anything else matters, to be fair.
I can invite great people, superstars like you to my podcast, have a
There you go.
conversation, learn from your experiences.
Yeah.
Why are you on podcasts?
The reason that I'm in venture capital is that I wanted to change it. So maybe we'll talk about this later, but then realizing that you can't change it. Venture capital is a very specific beast for a very specific purpose. But what I can do is, having spent 24 years on the other side of the desk, I can reflect to the founder community, because I'm a founder by heart, that
Mhm.
this is what's going on, this is what it is, this is what it isn't. This is when you should take venture capital cash, this is when you shouldn't take venture capital cash, and just completely reflect that constantly. All my learnings, I write every day, and I share 3 or 4 times a week. So I don't share everything because some of it doesn't end well, and some of it is a bit too contentious, and I don't mind being contentious, but some of it gets a little bit too edgy. Um, and I just try and reflect it. So that's all. So anything that my audience is the founder community and startups, anything that can reflect anything about raising capital, and that's my passion. That's why I exist.
You have quite a unique journey from in the 90s, if I read it right, from modeling, music industry to tech
Yeah.
and to venture capital.
Yeah, random as hell. I mean, I've always been unemployable, so I've never been able to get a regular job, work in a bank. I'm not academic. Um, so I don't have that very path driven, oh, I'm going to study economics, I'm going to get into politics, I'm going to go and study whatever. I never had that. I never had any of those paths. So I'm pretty unemployable, and I've got a fairly fizzy brain where it's kind of bouncing around all over the place. So I've only ever been able to work for myself, and I've had the opportunity to do weird and wonderful things. Like I was dating a girl whose sister was a photographer, took some photographs of us on holiday. Her best friend was a super high fashion photographer for Vogue, a very famous photographer. I don't remember who she was, but allegedly a very famous photographer. And she said, "Oh, that guy that's dating your sister, he should be a model." And so she said, "Look, why didn't you go to some of the agencies?" Like, I was 16. I was like, "I don't want to do that." Um, she said, "No, go. I'm going to make you go." And I went, "All right, fine." So I went to one agency once, which was Models One, where Davina McCall, if you probably don't know Davina McCall, but she's quite a famous celebrity in the UK. She hosted Big Brother, which I'm sure was an Austrian and a
Yeah,
German,
yeah,
like a
yeah.
European product as well on TV. Um, and she became my agent. She said, right, we're gonna. She basically took a Polaroid picture of me. That was back in the days before digital. This is like whatever it was, 1988, and kicked me out the door to go and see photographers. And I basically became an accidental teenage kind of kids tween model. And then I got an opportunity to go for a pop video, which wasn't a pop video, it's actually an audition for a pop band. And
Mm.
then Simon Cowell, who became our A&R man, our kind of our record company representative, said, right, you're in a band. I went, okay, fine. And I'm 18 at this, I'm 18 and a half, 19. So all of these opportunities, weird and wonderful opportunities kind of came my way. And I just took them. I'd always been raised to take every opportunity that comes. So I went, sure, I'll be in a band. Sure, I'll be a model. And so I didn't really want to be in the public eye. I've got no interest. I can't really sing or dance. I've got no interest in being on stage. But it happened and it was a wonderful opportunity. And I did it for 4 years. And then I got to the point where I just couldn't live with myself, and I can't do. I just can't. This is not me. I don't enjoy this. I don't like. And we were starting to become quite successful. I mean, in France, we were starting to have #1 hits in France and across Germany and in Japan. I was like, if I'm going to leave, I have to leave now because otherwise I'm going to be platinum handcuffed to this industry. So that was the early stage, and then I left, and then it was like, what the hell do you do? And I was lost. I had broken up with my girlfriend. She got the house and the car, and I had to give all my money back to the record company because I'd left our contracts early after one album, not five. So I was poor and unpopular, and I went back and I moved back to my mum's house. I was like, Jesus, that was like 4 years of crazy, and had to start again. And then worked in bars, restaurants, and ended up helping a friend build a learning center. So building networks and installing computers and then teaching people how to use them. And then I went and off and did my certifications and became a Windows and an Apple engineer. So I did both streams. And then just that was it. And I was in love. And this is like mid to late 90s now.
Mm.
And that was it. And I just love tech. And I was, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And here we are.
That's quite a journey. I was drawn to your profile because of your posts about venture capital and investing, and learned during the preparation for this podcast that you were part of a band Worlds Apart, which was basically
Yes.
also famous in Austria.
Was it?
And
We would go to countries and sometimes we'd have like crowds of 10, 20,000. I didn't even know we'd released a single there. It was the weirdest. First time we went to Germany, I didn't even know that I thought we'd have to start again, and there was already a following. It was quite unusual. Yeah, fascinating. I mean, it's a different person ago. I'm 51 on Sunday, and I was 18 to 22 in those crazy days, and it's a whole different person. It's an eon ago. It's now nice to look back, and it was fun and exciting and interesting. But at the time when you leave and you're in the roar of it, it was very it was quite troubling, but what an experience. And I'm very grateful and privileged.
we are in the same age group. I'm 49, and the 90s,
Young, we're young.
yeah, that's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And then after the music industry, you moved towards Apple and Microsoft tech. What
Yeah.
was so attractive in this part for
Well,
you?
I mean, I kind of again fell into it, but realized that tech, I mean, obviously the internet was very embryonic. Like 90, I got my first kind of computer that was connected to the internet, I think in 95. And it was just so clumsy and useless and dial up and it was almost useless. But I was helping companies install equipment and then help their teams use it, mainly for 10 to 100 employees. So the kind of the S to the M's of the SME or SMB market, depending on your terminology. So I was installing networks, installing what was primarily email systems, Microsoft Exchange, the Office suite, and then there were some weird and wonderful early CRM tools and ERP systems, and we did a lot of satellite comms. So we installed a lot of the after I think it was the second Iraq War, we installed a lot of the rebuild satcoms systems for the companies that went into Iraq to then go and rebuild all the infrastructure. So my business partner once was on a roof installing satellite equipment for internet access, and there were shots going through. So insurgents were shooting at the satellite dish as he's installing it. There were holes in the dish, and it's like, shit, and then went down and then obviously went and hid away for a period of time. And the teams, they said, yeah, that happens. They just shoot at us, or they'll throw a bomb over the gates. And that was like their normality. It was like, this is absolutely nuts. But so I'm digressing. So we did, yeah, that whole hardware piece. And then very quickly I realized that the tin doesn't matter. The physical laptop, the physical network is all going to be pushed into the ether. It's all going to be cloud-based. So early 2000s, we started transitioning to selling IT as a service. So literal equipment on a monthly fee, and then helping teams manage it. So giving them a dashboard to then manage their whatever they had, what internet, laptops, networks, file storage, whatever it might be. And then I sold that to my partner in 2007. No, maybe slightly later, 2009, maybe. And because I kind of wanted to do other things, and I realized that the hardware was irrelevant, and I didn't really like the business. All you could do was get people back to a state of normality or neutrality. You can never improve. So I wanted to use software to kind of improve and create productivity and efficiency. And that's when I kind of flipped into the startup world and the building software and the building B2B software world. And that was about 2007 to 10 was that kind of first, like, oh, okay, kit doesn't matter anymore. It's actually cloud. It's actually software. And that's where that all began.
Yeah, it was a fun time in the 90s. I remember that I tried to build something similar to Facebook with a friend. I grew up in Styria. It was more rural areas. And when we tried to pitch it to banks and people with money, they were quite confused because they said, I mean, we don't need it. We need a website. Can't you build a website for us or install hardware? What I'm curious to learn from you, or hear from you is, I mean, in the 90s, why did you found a company? Why did you become an entrepreneur? I mean, wouldn't the easier way have been just an employee, go into a company?
Yeah, for sure.
9 to 5, stay home then in the evening.
You're right. I mean, but then there's no fun. I mean, that to me was never an option. Like I said, I'm unemployable. No one would employ me. I don't play nicely with other people. I'm quite hard to work with. I'm obnoxious and strong-willed, and my brain bounces around from topic to topic. So I'm not easy, and I don't fit in that box. So it was never an option. I mean, I just couldn't work. I mean, a lot of the companies that I served were serving corporate, so I would go in often as their tech rep and be part of, you know, GlaxoSmithKline or American Express or Santander and see their head operations. Like, there is no way that I could work in these little cubicles and do this microcosmic part of this tiny cog in a massive pie. It's like, I just couldn't do it. So it wasn't a choice. Not like I wanted to go, do you know what? I really want to take a load off and I want to just go and work in corporate and earn a good salary and get a pension and get a healthcare plan and buy a nice house and marry Doris and move to the country. That wasn't an option. So the only other option, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are like this. The only other option is to start your own business or build something new or try something new. And that always appealed to me. Has always only ever appealed to me. So I've never known any different, and my brain doesn't work that way.
You have built 4 companies yourself.
Yes.
That's
So
impressive.
I've done more than 4 companies, managed to sell 4. And listen, I mean, not for huge cash, but enough to travel the world, buy some things and have a nice life. But I think the challenge that I have is that as soon as a company becomes operational, I get bored. So I tend to sell companies way too early. So get involved, try something new, nothing to something, but then I'll sell them when they're doing 1 million or 2 million in revenue. And I mean, one I literally pretty much gave away because I lose interest. I'm not really, this is a bit of a funny thing to say as a venture capitalist, but I'm not really motivated by money. I'm motivated by founders building the next degree, the next level of innovation, the next thing. It's the later stage investors post me that will help them make money, take them to Series B and C and beyond, and hopefully healthy trade sales, hopefully IPOs. But I don't really care. I mean, I figure if my job is to get the bedrock of innovation supported, the early stage from nothing to something or kind of mid-stage seed, I don't really care about anything else. So the businesses that I've sold were I mean, there was nothing impressive in there. I sold an IT services. I sold one business twice. I sold a video interviewing platform twice. I built the VIP ticketing system for the Olympics. That was through Atos, who are the big IT provider
Oh,
for the
really?
Olympics.
Yeah, yeah.
So I built a almost like a social media war room for an advertising agency. And then sold that to them. So but I like messing around. As soon as a business becomes operational and it's coins in, coins out, and employ more people to do more things, I don't care. I've got no interest. So I obviously use the 4 times equity because it sounds impressive. It's really not impressive. It's just me dicking around.
Oh, well, I think it's impressive. I mean, we have similar experiences. I went to university. I always had a dream to have a degree of something, and then decided to work for companies to learn big corporations. And the first job I got in was Atos, basically after the merger with
Oh,
Atos
great.
Origin in 2000, right before the internet bubble burst,
Yeah.
and was in M&A. And instead of building a huge company and being part of that, it went the other way, laying people off at scale. Which
Oh,
leads me to the next question, to failure.
yeah.
When I look in the corporate world, failure is absolutely negative. I mean, when people make mistakes, it's a huge problem in defined processes. You need to do things a certain way. When I look at the startup world, failure basically is the fuel for startups. They need to go to certain kinds of development processes, and it's not a frictionless process. How do you see failure in companies?
It needs a healthy dose of context. I think failure, and not so much now, but failure had been, and I think it was the Zuckerberg era, like kind of mid 2000s, when move fast and break things and fail fast, and all these kind of super cool, trendy phrases came out of Silicon Valley. Um, I don't think it's the whole picture, and I think it needs healthy doses of context. So we all fail every day, don't we? I mean, whatever we do, there's going to be failure points in any task that we take. And it's sometimes our own fault, sometimes it's a third party, sometimes it's something completely out of our control. And so building a startup is about multiple mini failures or mini no's, go aways, so that you can then start to test, iterate, direct, and then implement and then start to build out. Now, so the challenge I have is that failing as in closing a business is okay, and then you just start another one. I think it became too hackneyed and too cool and too sexy, and it lost all meaning. But failure is a massive part of the startup world. I like being told no. I like failing at selling, or failing at building a product or a feature. I think it's important. It's what did Edison say? I found 1,000 ways not to build a light bulb, or whatever that famous quote was. All failures, but not really. It's about navigating a road elsewhere. The no's are over here, but you start to navigate the tree of success. So failure in that context, I think, is really healthy. This whole move fast, break things, which I think has died a bit now. I think that whole essence, I think, is really unhealthy. But I don't hear founders or the startup community talk in those terms so much. And also, especially at the moment, where lots of startups and also lots of VCs are closing doors. So that whole kind of failure being great, lauded in bull times, it's fine, but now we're in bear times. I think it's being suppressed, and quite rightly so. It should never have been that. It should never have been that cool, sexy thing in the first place. I don't know.
Yeah, the times feel similar to 2000, 2001, or 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
And I think there is a difference in culture between Central Europe, where I am located, and you're in London, if I remember that right.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I think the environment in the United Kingdom is much more entrepreneur friendly than in Central Europe.
It's changing. I see the German government are starting. I mean, the French government have really stepped up their game, and the German government, because love or hate governments, we need that level of infrastructure support, like tax incentives, tax schemes, entrepreneur and founder friendly business environments, and so we need government support. Even though I'm quite negative about government on the whole, but we need that structure. So I think my sense is that Central Europe is starting to become more founder friendly and starting to wake up to the fact that technology is going to save us from ourselves, and governments want their local their people to be the center or part of the center of that universe. So we're all part of the solution. So I think that's a great thing. I think central is got a long way to go. I mean, England we're so risk averse. I mean, we,
You think
doing
so?
it the oh yeah. I mean, it may look differently from the outside, but because London is the center of the financial universe. But just look at the FTSE. I mean, the FTSE is all propped up with oil and fossil fuels and a little bit of pharma, and it's just and tobacco. I mean, it's like we're living in the 80s or the 70s. We still have to list in the States. So all of my companies, we've sold 2 this year so far, they've sold to American corporates. Because
It's
we just don't have this culture. We don't have a sales culture. We don't have a listings market. Which technology company in their right mind is going to list on the FTSE or the German market or a Parisian market? I mean, we're just not. We're gonna, if you want to make it, full well you've got to go to the States, and that's just a crying shame.
I mean, since we are in the same young age group,
Yes.
why did it change? I mean, when you remember the 90s, you worked in tech in the 90s, I worked in tech in the 90s, and there was this spirit of entrepreneurship. Go out, found a company, start something, get into the mobile industry.
In the 90s, it was to me, when I was telling people this, they just found it weird. I mean, I think, and also I mean, I don't know if it was the same in Austria or Central Europe, but at some point the term entrepreneur became founder. Nobody really talks about entrepreneurship anymore. They talk about founding a business. And I think entrepreneurs were a bit weird and a bit uncool and a bit unsexy, but founders are the opposite. And I think to me, that change was maybe, I think, mid 2000s. So I think tell me how it was for you, but in the 90s, being an entrepreneur was odd and just unusual.
I think I remember the 80s, the usual training was finish school, go to university,
yes,
get a degree, get a job, and make a career. Then in 1993, 1994, I mean, CERN puts the www protocol in the public domain. The internet started, Amazon hit it. And in Graz, where I studied, everything was about the internet and the mobile industry. And
you're much more progressive than we were then.
Austria was a playing ground for the mobile industry. Basically, it was a small country. We have mountains. We have one big city, and it's a challenge for the mobile industry to build an infrastructure that works in the mountains and also in big cities and also in rural areas outside the mountains.
So there's a needs-driven industry. Perfect.
Yeah.
What better? What better?
And there were a lot of entrepreneurship spirit. Then came 2000. And a lot of companies shut down. So basically before 2000, a friend of mine was a fund manager. And I once asked him, what's your investment criteria? And he said, internet strategy. I said, what do you mean? And he answered, the only question I have to ask nowadays is whether a company has an internet strategy or not. If they say yes, I can invest. If they don't, it is a no, I can't invest.
How easy. How delightfully easy.
The bubble burst afterwards. So basically it went down. And then, my opinion, we lost it in Europe. The whole digital revolution that also was partially started in Europe, in my opinion. We also had Amazon's back then in the 90s, or early stage Amazon's ideas around Facebook. But with the burst of the bubble, nobody wanted to invest anymore.
Yeah.
And the entire digital revolution that came afterward, I mean, Apple produced the iPhone, which basically shut down Nokia, Siemens, Ericsson, all these companies that started in Europe.
Yes.
And were replaced by the iPhone. We didn't move forward with projects similar to Google. We didn't move forward with projects similar to Amazon. My question to you is, what's your opinion? Why did it change so much in Europe? Why did we not keep up?
It's just risk. We don't know. Europe doesn't know how to sell. It doesn't know how to invest. It doesn't know how to take a chance. We know that technology is going to absolutely transform the world. Everybody intellectually knows this, but we look to America or Silicon Valley specifically to become the instigator, the birthplace, and it's just a bit nuts. I mean, if there's one thing we've learned from China, And the rise of China over the last 2 decades is that this stuff can be done. Okay, they've basically mostly ripped off other ideas and they haven't. I mean, there's no such thing as a new idea. So, but they haven't really progressed it. They've just taken what was working elsewhere and applied. I might be being a bit mean there, but what they have shown is that you can create the infrastructure for innovation. And Dubai is doing it now. The Middle East is doing it now. I mean, you've got Saudi with Neom, you've got Dubai, and they're doing so much investment in the tech world. Will they make it or not, or will they add much value on top of what's going on across China, Europe, the States? Who knows? But do you know what? They're putting themselves out there, trying to divest from oil and get amongst it. And all we're doing in the UK is bloody safety and alignment. We've got the Bletchley Park guys who are doing, AI safety stuff. Come on, we need investment. We need trading zones. We need government support. We need pension companies to be told to invest, because they've started, but it's just almost too little too late, or nonsensical stuff. We've got something in the UK called the Mansion House Compact, where a number of, I think it's 8 pension companies have been suggested to by government that they invest 5% of their assets under management into venture, into technology. But I know what's going to happen. It's all going to be super late, private equity stuff that's super safe, that's up there. It's not going to move the needle. It's not going to support innovation or support startups. I might be being a bit cynical, but it's just and then Jeremy Hunt, our chancellor, launched a £1 billion fintech fund. It's like, who cares? £1 billion is a rounding error. So we're not doing. I'd like to see the UK and Europe. I don't know if the UK is Europe anymore. I guess it's not, but I'd like to see the whole of our region do more. I think France and Germany stepping up might well give a kick into the UK to go, hang on a minute. We don't want to be outdone by the continental Europeans. We've just had Brexit, so we can do what we want. So let's do something. So I'd love to see that, but we also just don't have the money. COVID, I mean, the UK government has been awful, and COVID has, scoured the coffers of cash. So there's a challenge that we have. It's not like we're in good times, that there's lots of money swishing around that they can make these choices. But I think, listen, I'm rabbit holing and running all over the show here. I can't even remember the original question, but I just ultimately want to put Europe on the map. I want to see much more investment from across business, supported by government, into AI, fusion, new technology. I don't really care what the technology is. I just think we just need to do more, right? This is a fascinating moment to be alive. There's so much stuff that can be done, and we haven't even started. We think that there's an app for everything, but there really isn't. We've got so much to do.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, Silicon Valley paved the way and showed what's possible when the ecosystem evolves and works together. I totally agree that we lost it in Europe somehow in the last 20 years. And one reason definitely is the one that you mentioned, pension funds. A lot of capital is locked up in Central Europe, in foundations, in pension funds, and they have zero incentive, zero interest to invest anything in venture capital, anything in technology.
Yeah.
Politicians.
And now, do you know what the worst thing is? Now we're fighting fixed income. If you can put money in the bank and earn 6%, where am I going to go? Why am I going to take any risk? And I think people don't fully understand that venture capital is the one asset class that's A, the highest performing and has been for decades, but B, nobody needs to invest in venture capital. No high net worth, no family office, nobody needs to invest. They can all do other things and make healthy returns. VC is the least loved and the most lucrative asset class by quite a margin. It's just a super weird thing. So there needs to be more mechanisms to create tomorrow's innovation, which isn't late stage private equity, it's early stage venture capital. That's where the magic happens.
And we are good in research anyways. I mean, the UK, continental Europe has a lot of great universities, but it needs the right regulation.
All the talent. We have all the R&D. We have all the software developers. They just go elsewhere. I mean, look at, I don't know, the NASDAQ. Look at top tech. I think 30% are run by Indians. I mean, we have all of the talent in Europe. We just don't have any of the throughput. There's nowhere for the talent here to go. So they all end up in the States or in other countries or doing other things. But if we can embrace and engage the unis and engage the incubators, the accelerators, and also engage a culture of entrepreneurship across Europe, it'll be a very different story.
I'm curious to hear your opinion. With all the headwinds that you have in Europe, I mean, when I left the corporate world in 2005, 2006, to help with a spin out from Novartis, which was basically a great thing. I mean, funded by the world's best VCs back then, and led by Rod Novak, who later founded CRISPR Therapeutics with Emmanuel Charpentier, who got the Nobel Prize. My family said, "Are you nuts? Are you crazy? Why are you doing that? Why do you give up your career and go down this path?" I'm curious to hear from you. With all these challenges that you perceive in the industry, why did you want to become a venture capitalist?
I didn't want to become a venture capitalist. I was angel investing. I was interim CEOing and working with startups and running out of money, didn't have much cash left, just kind of messing around in startup land. And then I met my business partner, who is another exit entrepreneur, ex-founder. And he's a natural VC. He was born to be a VC. He took a very traditional route, uni, MBA, IBM, started one company, sold. So very kind of traditional, proper, structured path through into startup land. But we're two sides of the same coin, both in B2B software, but completely different paths to it. I'm all feelings, he's all facts, he's all kind of legal and structure, I'm all people and energy. So completely different people. And he wanted to start the fund, and I was running out of money. And if you want to support startups, you need cash. It's like, how do you do that? Well, you raise a fund, right? So go and take other people's money and invest it. So he wanted to start a fund. I was like, sure, you're the most impressive man I've ever met. I'll start a fund with you. So we started our first fund in 2018. We started working in 16, 17, and then started our first fund in 18.6. Yeah, we'll be 6 years in February. We registered SuperSeed as our venture firm. But I didn't want to, and I'm a very reluctant VC. There's a lot about venture capital that I don't care for. Most of it. Mads, my partner, often moans at me for being a misery about the industry and stop being such a sourpuss about venture capital. But venture capital serves no one. 0.0001% of new businesses or something. It serves literally no one, and it's an ugly, brutal mechanism, and not everyone should take venture capital. So I'm always torn. I mean, I am a VC. I will stay a VC. I'm going to try and contort it to the version of venture capital that I want to create. Be part of the solution that you want to see in the world, or whatever Buddha said, or whatever it was. So there's not much I can do to change venture capital as a structure, as a financial vehicle, but I can do it in smarter ways. We can definitely do it in different ways, and we can be a new version. My partner's quite anti some of this because he's very traditional, but I think I can slowly contort him into changing a lot of the ways that we invest and support teams in different ways and invest in slightly different sectors and spaces, because I think there's stuff to be done, and most of my job will be automated by AI. It's already happening now, which is fabulous, and I want my job to disappear to a degree. I want my job to be completely automated away, and for the right founding teams to get access to the right capital at the right time and in the right way. So I'm going to create all of those systems behind the scenes to enable that. But going back to the question, I only care about founders and startups and innovation and effectively messing with big business. I just want to mess with enterprise. I want all of the startups that I work with, because I only invest in productivity and efficiency. I want them to truly disrupt the enterprise. That's what I want to do. But the VC part of it, I could take or leave. I don't care. It's a silly industry with a silly name.
What's your vision of venture capital? I mean, if the world were an ideal place, you could model it the way you want it. What's your vision?
I don't think I would change the vision of venture capital. Venture capital is power law driven. It's a very specific financial vehicle. What I would like to do, and I will do at some point, is bridge the gap between friends, family, angel, and VC. So I want to create a new form of business builder, new form of accelerator, which we're kind of doing already at the moment. My VC firm operates in a very specific platform way that some VCs do and some VCs don't. So it's a very specific form of venture capital that I'm already in. But what I would like to do is come slightly downstream, which again we're slightly doing, but come further downstream into business building. And my sense is that AI especially, and there'll be other technologies that support this, will enable more of us to be able to do more easily and more quickly without the need for large organizations. I think the day of the behemoth enterprise in some contexts is on the way out. So technology has already made massive inroads. I mean, I read the Gartner report for 24 the other day, and it's all about the rise of the builder. So basically, anybody can build really impressive platforms now to support their business. Or we could stitch together. Zapier, IFTTT kind of led the road here. You can build things and stitch together systems and platforms to do business. And I think we're going to go a layer higher where AI is going to enable not only that the inference to be made or the conclusions to come, but also to automate the action. So the difference that we have now with the platforms that are coming through now is that you need a human in the loop, but you can do so much more without a human. Soon we'll have your AI agent will be speaking to my AI agent to arrange a podcast or build a thing or go for dinner or do a thing. So we're kind of almost at that level now where it's not about actionable insights, but the insights are actioned. So it's not about information, it's not about platforms or dashboards. It's actually, I don't care about the dashboard, just make the change, just tweak the manufacturing plant or respond to their email or find that new sale, that new client, and the AI agent, wherever it is, will go and do that. So I think venture capital will be automated. Lots of industries to a degree will be automated. And what I want to do is to create a funding structure in the gap between angel and VC that creates not necessarily unicorns. I don't give a shit about unicorns. That's the power law model. I care about more people moving into entrepreneurship to solve more societal problems, more business problems, and build substantial profit-making businesses. Because there's nothing wrong with money. It's just that humans are greedy and stupid, right? We're mean. We do nasty things, but money is a notional token, isn't it? It's brilliant. It's given us all the things that we have. Capitalism works, to a degree. It's just humans that are the weak link in the chain. So if I can enable more people to become entrepreneurs, to solve more problems in the world, and to constantly be part of that circular mechanism, that's where I want to end up.
What's the gap that you mentioned between venture capital, family offices, business angels?
There's a gap between, I think most founders think that there's a natural progression between a bit of bootstrap, then you go and get some debt or friends and family or raise a small angel round, and then it's just natural to go and raise venture capital. It's not. Venture capital doesn't serve 99.9% of the people that are on that path or think they're on that path. So there's a gap between angel investing and venture capital, and it's kind of been filled by a few accelerators, a few incubators. They've kind of moving into that kind of angel, and then they go and take grants or a bit of philanthropy money, which I don't agree with. I think that you become a grant entrepreneur, and I think that screws your business. But not always. I'm being a bit mean, but it's not always a healthy option to take too much money. You don't have weights and measures, I don't think. But there is a gap. There is a gap there to build really, really world-changing, substantial portfolio businesses where I would like to have a portfolio of 10, 20, 30, 50 million pound companies that have started from nothing, where there are more people, more stakeholders, rather than one behemoth that goes IPO in 10 years' time or 7 years' time. The Ubers, the WeWorks, it's just part the parcel of venture capital creating more, just basically subsidizing the client. I mean, those days are over for now, but that's what venture capital creates. It creates non-business business models that shouldn't exist in the real world, because venture capital has subsidized the route all the way through to create the monopoly and be the Peter Thiel in the industry and crush it. It's like, that's not good for people. That's just not good for us as a society. So I want to take up that middle gap, that angel to VC, where rather than 1 out of 30 companies becoming a unicorn, I have 20 out of 30 becoming 50 or 100 million pound substantial employing, supporting businesses that are doing good things and changing the way that business is done.
Why did it change? I mean, when I think back 20 years ago, the normal way to start a business was start a business, get customers, and grow the business with the cash flow that comes in. You need to be careful with growing your customer base and serving them well so that they allow you making a profit that you can reinvest. And when you have a case that can significantly scale faster with investment capital, then you go to investors, and part of it is venture capital, basically. When, in your opinion, did this attitude change? I mean, now it feels to me like everybody wants to raise venture capital. So when they start a company,
yeah, I think you can blame, Mark Zuckerberg for that. I think when did he start Facebook? 2004, I think. So
like
if the news feed is feeding you stories of 24-year-old entrepreneurs becoming billionaires, that becomes very sexy. And then the very platform that he invented, well, he didn't, I mean, he wasn't the first social network. I think it was the 8th or 9th popular social network. It's like Google was probably the 13th or 14th search engine, but everyone thinks that they were the beginning. It's like, nah, these things have been around for decades, or well, many years before you. But when you have those stories amplified through the news cycles, it becomes sexy and cool, and everyone thinks they can just start a business in their garage and become a billionaire. I mean, the truth is that most successful entrepreneurs are in their 50s. They are white men. They tend not to be women, and they tend not to be people of color, and that's changing, but slowly. But I think that whole epoch has kind of created this cool, billionaire. I'm gonna start a startup and get rich, and it's not like that, as you know. It's it's the hardest job on the planet and probably the least lucrative. I would have made more money had I stayed investing in property than in startup.
yeah.
I have no doubt. Maybe that would change as a VC if I make the right bets. Maybe that would change as a VC. But had I carried on investing in, I used to be a property developer, so I'd buy property and convert and sell and twist and do up and sell. So I loved that. But I stopped when I got more heavily into tech. And I'd probably have made more money had I done that, or invested in the S&P. I'd have probably made more compound money just by taking my 8% a year.
I totally agree. And when you just invest in Apple, Facebook, Google, I think it would be much better than investing in some startups. I mean, when you look at the facts, mention Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, this is a handful of people. And when I look back in the last 30 years, how many people I met, started a company, didn't work, started the next company, didn't work, started the next company. Yeah. But they didn't become these shiny billionaires. It's just a few. But
yeah, I think that's 99.999% of people that start businesses. I mean, I think there's also a difference between business managers and entrepreneurs. I think people look at people who've started a business as an entrepreneur, but really they're not. They're doing something that's always been done, and they're becoming an accountant or setting up a marketing agency. To me, they're business managers. A founder or an entrepreneur is looking at that industry and doing it in a whole new way and transforming that industry. That's what a founder or an entrepreneur is to me. So, and there's nothing wrong with either or both. I mean, each have their space in the world. So,
sorry to interrupt you. How do you find out which personality a person has when you invest? Whether it's this kind of entrepreneur that you mentioned, set out venturing out into the world to disrupt an entire industry, or just a regular business? What makes the difference in your opinion?
I mean, I have a kind of a trifecta, a three-pronged kind of personality test in my head when I meet people, and it's charmingly disagreeable and determined. So are you going to sell me, wax my ears, tell me everything that I want to hear? Brilliant. Are you a little bit obnoxious, a little bit disagreeable? I don't want you rolling over to everything I say just because I'm holding the checkbook. You're just a little bit disagreeable, not for its own sake, but just no, Dan, that's wrong. Or I think of this in a different way. And so there's a healthy kind of debate. And this determination, which is normally driven by they've lived in a world or they've been in a domain in business where they're just upset and irritated by the status quo. It's like, this has got to be done in a different way. So if they have this charmingly disagreeable and determined personality, and they've lived in a world for 5 years, maybe, and they've done the same thing over and over again, or dealt with the same idiots over and over again, it's like, I'm going to change this. Then they go, I'm starting a company that's going to transform how marketing is done, or procurement, or supply chain management, or the back office, or whatever it might be. That's the stuff that I find really interesting. So they're the people that change the world. Then you get the entrepreneurs, or you get the noisy entrepreneurs. But you know, when you meet people that are they're going to go out. And obviously my lens is the VC lens, is the power law lens. So I have a very specific view on how obnoxious and how determined and how disagreeable people need to be. And it's can be fairly psychopathic at times. They're like, I don't care. I'll sell my grandmother. I'm going to make this thing. I'm going to take this thing global and go big. So that's what you look for as a VC.
How do you handle these people? You mentioned disagreeable, determined, and obnoxious.
Yes.
Basically, it's challenging personalities.
Yeah, but I just described myself as well. So,
yeah. How do you get along with these people then at the end of the day? I mean,
I don't need to like you.
Mm.
I need to respect you. There needs to be a working relationship. I would like to like you. I would like to go to the pub with you. I don't drink alcohol anymore, but I would like to, spend time with you, go for dinner. But we don't have to. We have to get on a mission and be professional and make something happen. We're going to make magic together. It's like a marriage, but it's not like a marriage insofar as we're going to, collapse on a Friday night on the sofa and give each other a cuddle. Nah, we're not going to do that. So I just want to, you're here to do your job. I'm here to do my job. I'm here to connect, give you money, connect the dots, help get things out of the way, put some things in the way, and watch you fly. And that's my job as a venture capitalist.
There are so many discussions currently on social media about how to approach a venture capitalist. What's your way? How do you handle these initial stages of building a relationship with noble entrepreneurs? What do you want to see?
I want to see thought. I want to see. I don't need to see everything, and nothing needs to be perfect because I invest very early, right? Pre-seed and seed. So some traction or no traction, some clients, sometimes no clients, but there's working product, and there's a really hungry team who've got a working product, and they're trying to do something new in a new way in business. But for the early interaction days, I just want to see joined up thinking. I want to see a healthy understanding of their purpose, why they get out of bed, what they're trying to achieve, their mission, what their vision is, like how they see the world changing in 10 or 20 years time, and what they think their position in the market is today. What is the bit that's missing? What is the differentiated space? Where's the magic sauce? Where's the Trojan business model? What's the thing that's going to change or give them the first step to give them a chance to change the vision that they have or create the vision that they have? So there's an attitudinal piece, there's a bit of a practical piece in there, and then there's just some joined up thinking where they know I can ask them anything and they'll have a really sensible, considered, thoughtful answer. That's all.
You mentioned that you would like to see companies that transform the world, disrupt industries, and ideally destroy the big corporations and replace them.
Not necessarily destroy. I would like to see their methods destroyed. I don't think they will be around in the same way in 10, 20, 30 years' time. I think enterprise is going to radically transform. That said, maybe destroy them, but I think I want to destroy the shitty bits. There's a lot of stuff that goes on about how they behave, what they get away with, how they treat their employees, what they do, which still need to transform. Things have changed massively, right? We're not living in boxes where nobody talks about mental health and you go to work 9 to 5, you hate it, you leave. Those worlds are majoritively over, but there's still so much more to do.
Totally agree. I mean, in hindsight, it's always easy. I mean, Facebook, now it's quite obvious that it's a great story. Google the same. Now it's quite obvious. When they started in the 90s, I mean, it's the number 13, 14. Why do you start another search engine? The same with Apple, basically. I mean, when I saw that Steve Jobs wants to put another mobile phone on the market in 2007, I just thought
Yeah.
he's nuts. The question that I have to you is finding this transformative ideas and founders is always, in my opinion, a little bit tricky because
Yes.
they do something that nobody else does, and the majority of people think it's crazy to do that. What gives you the confidence to invest in those people when everybody around you says, don't do it?
Yeah, well, I'm a gambler. So, and every VC thinks that they're the smartest person on the planet. And because you have to, as a gambler, you have to get to a state of conviction where you go, this is going to be massive and we're going to kill it and we're going to crush it, because you have to. Otherwise, you'd do nothing. You would invest nothing. But to get there, to take that path, for me, there's only two vectors. It's either it's the team and the market. So do I believe you as Mr. and Mrs. Founder? And do I believe that there are enough of them to care about you? And you can either be brownfield or greenfield, right? So you can either be doing something in a new way, but in an existing industry, or in an existing, you're supplanting something, or it's greenfield and it's a whole new way of doing something that's never been invented before. And I will invest in both. I will invest in the replacement of bad process, bad technology, bad people, whatever that might be, or a whole new way of doing something that's never been considered. All saying that, even the stuff that I think is the most transformative stuff that we've invested in, there's no, like we said before, there's no such thing as a new idea. I mean, it's not like the iPhone wasn't, smartphones were not a new idea. It was just the fact that there was this touching glass multifunctional device that you could have in your pocket that became a supercomputer in your pocket. It was, I mean, I remember I got my first smartphone. I think it was a Nokia communicator. I think it was about 90. When was that? 99, maybe. So 8 years before. And then I had all the horrible Microsoft devices, and then all the Blackberries throughout the kind of the late 90s, early 2000s. So I don't think it needs to be that much to be transformative. I think actually the actual technology play, I don't believe in moats anymore. I think technology moats are dead. But there's always that execution play, either the technology or something quite transformed, or there's an execution play where it's something quite simple, but it absolutely transforms how an industry is done. I mean, look at Airbnb that came out of the last crisis. I mean, there were loads of rental platforms for holiday homes, wasn't there? I mean, how did Airbnb, and you can deconstruct that, but it wasn't a chasmic piece of technology or a chasmic business model or something mega changed. It was pretty much what had always happened before. I mean, how many ride hailing companies were there before Uber? I mean, Uber was just venture capital crushing. It just used VC money to crush markets and own territories. And WeWork, I mean, that's a horrible business from the off. They just subsidized beautiful office spaces with SoftBank's cash. So anyway, I'm digressing, but I don't think there needs to be that much to be transformative, but it needs to be really considered and thought through and completely client-driven, completely client-centric. Also ignoring faster horses, because most clients will tell you what they think or lies because they think you need to hear those things, when really what they really want is something else. But sometimes it's something quite simple.
Yeah, creativity is a good thing. I mean, when we stay a little bit with the Apple story, in hindsight, it's clear. Back then, I mean, mobile industry was basically oversaturated. Everybody had, here in Central Europe.
Who would have thought they could supplant BlackBerry, right? Who would have thought?
Yeah.
I mean, BlackBerry were laughing. Oh, no one's going to touch a screen. Don't be silly. I mean, it was laughed out of the boardroom. It's just crazy.
But what was this difference? I mean, we had also, you mentioned Nokia. We had Siemens had similar devices on the market, and there were a plethora of Microsoft devices with similar functionality. What made the difference in Apple, in your opinion?
Human-centric. Just human-centric. I mean, obviously, Steve Jobs is the fundamental marketeer and salesperson on the planet. I mean, he's the world leading. What was his phrase at the end of all of his talks? Just one more thing. Oh, and there's one more thing. And he had this pattern of delivering talks that took you on this emotional roller coaster. So I mean, I tune into Apple events now, even though I mean, Tim Cook's an accountant, right? I mean, what the frick is he going to do? Nothing exciting. But how he sold, how he talked, he waxed in your ear, took you on this emotional journey, and he didn't get it all right. He got a lot of things wrong. I mean, if you look at a lot of the Apple products that failed under his control, and then in that, the Tim, what was his name? The other Tim. Anyway, the Pepsi guy that sacked Steve Jobs for 10 years.
Mm.
They had what, 80% product failure or something. I mean, they did a lot of crap, but they learned their craft, and it's just so elegantly customer centric. I mean, the iPhone doesn't even come with an instruction manual. I remember getting the box for a BlackBerry, and the instruction manual was this thick. So they are just absolutely elegantly customer centric, and incredibly beautiful and incredibly powerful, and you can't supplant that. You can't, and none of that was in the market. So you could say on one hand it's saturated, and on the other hand, there was just so much more to do. A bit like Skype. Who would have thought that Zoom would supplant Skype? Skype was just the personal and the business platform, and then Microsoft bought them, and they screwed the pooch, right? I mean, I think, to be fair, they just wanted it to be part of they wanted it to become part of the commercial suite, and they didn't really care about people using it in a particular way. They just wanted effectively to distribute Teams. So maybe they bought it to get rid of their own competition. Maybe that was the ploy, just remove that from the market while we distribute our own voice calling manager. But yeah, I mean, there are going to be, we'll have this conversation in 10 years time, looking back at, my God, who would have thought that Google would have been supplanted by Ding Dong, or Facebook, I think, is dead anyway. But all of these things that we think are normal and natural today are probably going to not be around in 10 years time.
I don't know. I think Facebook is a good place here in Austria for mental health. People can just tell the world what they don't like and what should change. And a lot of people here around use that. I hear that it's different in the United States. Customer centricity is definitely one thing that's extremely important for entrepreneurs, and especially here in Germany, Austria. I think people fiddle around too much with the tech. Which leads me to the next question to you. As a VC, you invest in early stage companies, basically in the seed, pre-seed rounds, where people have an idea and then start fiddling around with tech, and sometimes maybe forget about customers and just say, let's invest money to build the next cool gadget and don't look on the market, which might bring some tension to the relationship between VCs and founders. How do you manage building relationships with your founders to keep them on track?
Well, I don't invest in founders who think like that. So our value piece, so the platform that we run at SuperSeed, is helping founders commercialize, helping founders focus on clients, obsess about clients. And that's in our DNA. So if I get a sniff from any founder that they're going to go and want to build widgets in a dark room, it's just a no. So they know exactly what we stand for, because it's all over our website. It's how we talk, it's how we have our initial phone calls, it's how we engage. So I don't invest in those kinds of founders. And then when we agree to invest, we come up with a budget, we come up with a plan, and that plan is often hiring a lead sales, VP of sales, and building a go-to-market engine. So there's never a question that this is about anything apart from taking this incredible technology to market, because all that matters, I mean, you can have the second or third best technology and still win. There's a plethora of examples where the best technology hasn't won. It's good and it's good enough for function. Look at YouTube. YouTube was probably one of the worst video sharing platforms going when Google paid however many billions for it. So, and VHS, Betamax was a superior format, or the CD format. I mean, a lot of these things, technology, they weren't the best. So commercial and distribution wins, and so we only focus on that. So it's never a debate, it's never a question, and it gets weeded out in the process very early.
Can I summarize it in a way that SuperSeed, your fund, is commercialization and customers first?
Yeah, I mean, we are the value piece, the platform piece is all around commercialization. How do we get you to market? How do we build a global business? How does this become venture scale, global, change the world? How does this truly transform business and become the way, the next layer of efficiency and productivity for business? That's our North Star, is how efficient can you
Yeah.
be? How much productivity can you create in business across whichever sector? I don't care about the sector, I just care that it's transformative.
Do I get the right understanding? When you invest in pre-seed companies, I mean, very often they don't have a prototype yet, or they don't have. It's just
They
an idea.
do. They
They
do.
do.
We don't invest in non-working product pre-seed. We don't invest at ideation. We
Mhm.
invest at working product. That's our line in the sand. It doesn't have to be pretty. It has to be something that's working, that's in a client's hands, that they go, oh, there's value in this. That's the line.
So basically, if we stay in the podcast example, just a blunt example, don't have anything. If you have a better example in mind, you want to see a product with 100, 200 episodes on the market already, something that's tangible that people can touch.
Yes.
That's there.
Yes.
Okay, it's a prototype. And then you take your founders through a thought process in which they are challenged to think about, and now how do we get it to the customers? What do the customers need? Is it really what we have, what they need? How can we scale it? How can we expand that? How can we conquer the world with this product? And at the end of the day,
That's exactly right. I mean, it's what we do as part of our investment process is set up 10 new client phone calls for our founders. So we get to see how they behave and if clients, buy them and buy it. But also fundamentally, we get to see what kind of pull from the market there is for this offering. So we're using it as a diligence process to work together. No founder has ever said, I don't want more sales. So that's just not happening. So it's a very easy process to run. It's like, Christ, you're going to give me 10 new customers. Yeah, where do I sign? So that's the beginning of the process. And it's all about where are the soft spots in the market. Obviously, that changes over time. And the last year has been a massive transformational shift with client behavior. But is there a pull? Is there a pull in the market for this thing? And that's all that matters to new businesses. Is you don't want to be pushing water uphill. You want a go-to-market process, or at least it can be clumsy to start because they always are. But you need some way of knowing that there's a hunger for the thing that you're building, and the only way to do that is to get in front of clients. That's it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a deep tech company or a tech company.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a company, there must be a customer. This is just a given.
It has to be. I mean, deep tech is a funny one. I don't even know. I was sat at a round table with a bunch of VCs the other day, and I asked a very famous deep tech investor to define deep tech, and he couldn't. And it just made me smile. I mean, to me, deep tech is, and I gave him my definition, and he shot me down in flames, but he didn't give me a better one. So
What's your definition?
I said deep tech is a really transformative, smart, new technology with no discernible business model yet. So quantum is going to be transformative. Fusion is going to be transformative. They are deep tech operations, but you don't quite know how they're going to make money or who they're going to serve or what the outcome offering is going to be. So that's how I define deep tech.
I would add, totally agree to what you say. I would add with a scientific background. So
Oh,
basically,
yes.
the ideas evolve out of some sort of university scientific background, a lot of basic research.
Maybe I'm not as wedded to that. I think somebody else has kind of thrown that in the mix.
It's my definition. So
it's your world, right? So yeah.
No, I mean, I started in 2006, and most of the time when people ask me, what do you do? I mean, then in 2008, we had a financial crisis. I left Napriva, it was the Novartis spin-out, and started helping scientists. It was just a natural environment, drug developers. Yes. Yeah. And every time when people ask me, what's a job? What do we do? I say, I don't know. I don't know. I help scientists.
I'm in deep tech.
This was I think 2018 or 2019. I read this term deep tech on the internet. Yeah. We can claim that.
I think that's fair. I think everyone has a slightly different definition, but I think that's a fair one.
Yeah, I mean, it helps, I think, framing a little bit deep tech, where I say, okay, when an investor says he invests in tech, normally don't assume that he's very much into these long shots. So in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, especially here in Central Europe, I see it more as 2 to 3 years to create a significant return for investors. When we talk about
Okay.
deep tech, I think it's about 5, 15 years minimum.
Oh, it's more. I think deep tech. I think my sense is deep tech is 10-year plus.
Yeah.
In reality, I think you can shave, but I think the reality is it's a fund cycle is on average 10 years, and I think deep tech is longer than an average fund cycle. I would argue.
And I would add business to business. It's more products that are selling to other businesses, other corporates, or the governments. This is also something I don't see it so much
Yes, I
in
can't
business to
ever see deep
consumers.
tech. That's fair. I can't ever see deep tech being consumer, even though it will end up there, or elements or spin outs or sub products will be. I think that's right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Which makes it a little bit challenging and tricky because most industries still are very, it's a challenge to access the right people in the industry,
Yes.
to find the customers and to really talk about the real needs of this industry, and
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
some artificial intern that has some ideas.
You've kind of just got to go for it, haven't you? Kind of with deep tech, you kind of got to have complete conviction in the technology and just keep at it. I mean, it's just, I think that's the reality of it.
I think for me, the challenge in deep tech is working with scientists who are very much into developing products. I mean, it's the nature.
Yes.
Doing basic research, being all over the place, being creative. Then they have the first transition to a development company where they get plans, steps, and where someone tells them, don't move left or right. We just need to be very fast at this point because then we can talk to the industry.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is to get them to go out on the market and sell.
Yeah,
And
that must be a complete mind melt for most very technical academic people to go and do that.
I think it's a mind melt, and on the other hand, it's a lot of traveling. It's still there are these conferences. You don't meet the customers anywhere in a pub nearby. You just need to travel the world.
Yes. Yes, agreed.
Would you invest in deep tech companies with SuperSeed?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the condition that you want to see? What's the frame that you want to see when someone says, I'm a deep tech founder, I want to pitch to SuperSeed?
Well, I think I'm not convinced anybody would say I'm a deep tech founder. I mean, it's a little bit like when Web3 kind of became popular, and it just annoyed the hell out of me for so long. And crypto, I find offensive. I think it's just theft. And there was this big wave of, distributed ledgers, and I'm a Web3 entrepreneur and I'm a Web3 founder. And I never, we've done one blockchain business, which is all about intraday bank liquidity, where massive banks lend to massive banks for compliance. Because people don't know that JP Morgan needs to lend money to Goldman Sachs so that they can trade. People don't understand the mechanics that go on. So they've got a blockchain-based platform that enables that transaction. But I don't care about the technology. I find the human application of it sometimes offensive. But nobody would come to me and say, I'm a deep tech founder. I think they would say, I'm solving this problem. And it's, I was speaking to a lady the other day who's got a new way of, they're building a platform to scan for cancer, scans for cancer. But they've got a whole new way. And she said it's probably going to take 2 or 3 years to develop the technology to a significant enough level. I'm not convinced that's deep tech. I would put that in the deeper tech bucket. Because it's effectively taking a punt that this technology will work and this team is the right team to create that technology. But she didn't punt herself as a deep tech offering, although you could argue that she wasn't. So we don't do, and we also don't do things like, there's a lot of space stuff going around at the moment, which I find utter nonsense. How we're going to manage, rockets or satellites or mining operations on the moon or whatever it might be. I think you could put some of that in the deep tech bucket. I guess it's kind of not. I mean, we did see a quantum startup last year that was doing the network piece for quantum computers, even though some of the quantum computers don't exist yet. They were out there building the network and the security around the network that would support those kinds of computers when we get out of whatever 400 qubits and into the thousands that we need for it to become a useful platform. So, but they didn't punt themselves as a deep tech offering. They, it was just, quantum networking or whatever they called themselves. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I as long as there is a real world application or an adjacent real world application of something that is just going to be amazing, and whether that's quantum or fusion or something that is slightly outlandish, I would still back it.
Mhm. But it needs to have some component that explains to you that at the end of the development road, there will be a customer who benefits from
You
this
know what?
product.
In some instances, no. I would say 90% of the time you're right.
Mm.
I would feel comfortable taking a punt if for example, we've just invested in an Israeli startup who are effectively stopping AI algorithms hallucinating. They're creating the way to effectively produce proven results from AI algorithms or AI outputs or LLMs at the moment. So that you could almost put in the deep tech bucket. But the team were probably, I think, in the top 5 people that could do this in the world. And on that basis, I mean, like I said, I'm a gambler, right? I mean, it's about probabilistic thinking. Will they do it? Probably not. Is there a chance that they will solve this problem? Yes, there is. And are they the team to do it? Yeah, they're right up there with the top 10 thinkers or maybe top 100 thinkers in the world at doing this, solving this problem, solving the problem of AI being smarter
Mm.
and secure and more compliant. So yeah, they sometimes I wouldn't do it as a day job, but every now and then I don't mind going, do you know what? You are impressive. This is something that absolutely needs to happen. Let's go for it.
What did they do different that you stepped away a little bit from your principle?
They haven't done it yet. This is the challenge. They are just the possibly, I'd say, top 5 impressive teams I've ever met. And the way they work together, the skills that they have, and then the skills that the others, 3 founding members, this complementary skill set of just, I mean, I normally run for the hills, for example, when it's a team of academics, because academics don't know how to build a business, just to be rude, just for a second. But they've got the commercial, they've got this unbelievable academic science background, and also the team that's been built behind them of world-class brains. But they've only built, parts of the thing. So we haven't, it's a complete punt. It's a gamble.
Very often when we stay with these deep tech academic companies that you were talking about, when I look at teams, I see scientist number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 did a weekend MBA. And
Yes.
he's the commercial guy. He's the commercial guy then. What skills do you want to see in a company, in a team, as a VC?
I back technical and domain founders. So I need to know that you've lived and know the problem and that you are brutally smart. But the smarts don't necessarily need to all live in the domain. I've just backed a guy who is an ex-surgeon, incredible brain, ex-surgeon, never wanted to be a surgeon, was kind of forced through the family path, became a surgeon. He's also working in recruitment, which is an industry that I said I would never get into in investment. I hate rec tech and HR people tech. I think it's a folly. Like ed tech, I think it's just a vacuous, empty money pit. But he's a non-domain expert in rec tech, but the team was so impressive. And they had commercial, they had the smarts, they had somebody who's from the domain. So they've and it's an early stage gamble, but sometimes you need to create the rules and sometimes you need to break the rules. So that's part of the 80-20, I think, is fine. 80% follow the rules, 20% break the rules.
So he wants to have a team with a diverse skill set and not
Yes.
with the same.
Diverse skill set. If they don't have commercial, we'll hire in commercial because it's the one senior function that can be bought in. You can't buy in. Well, you probably can do any of them, but you can't really buy in domain. You can't really buy in kind of that hunger to solve the problem, that entrepreneur. You can't buy in the founder level, that you can't. I don't believe, but you can buy in the commercial functions. You can buy in somebody who's lived in that problem set or an adjacent problem set and has taken a company from 50,000 MRR to 5 million MRR. You can buy that in, and they either become part of the core founding or core management or core team, or they don't, and they move on. They do their job and then they move on to their next gig, and that's okay. But that's quite a functional role. That lead sales at the right time to bottle founder sales in transition is quite a functional role. But everything else has to be inside, I think.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Apple had a similar story. I read it in the book, The Power Law written by Sebastian Mallaby. They needed to hire at least one sales guy, one guy with a business background, so that VCs were motivated to invest in the company.
Yeah.
And this leads me to the next question. On your LinkedIn profile, I read a post that where you stated Vinod Khosla. I mean, you do a lot of work with your founders, and it sounds to me that you're activist. And Vinod Khosla made the statement that 90% of startup investors add zero value to a company and 70% at negative value.
Yeah.
How do you see this statement by Vinod Khosla?
I think he's spiking the algorithms to present news and to present headlines. I agree that, I mean, I'll take it personally. Have I ever added negative value in a strategy or a board meeting? Yes, I have. I have been an oxygen thief in meetings. Not often, but every now and then I've not added value. Do most of the meetings that I have with other VCs or investors at board or at strategy with founding teams add value? I would say it's about a 50-50 hit rate. So 50% either do or do regularly or do generally, and 50% just don't. I mean, some of the boards I'm on are just updating old people and they're miserable, and I'm not leading them and it's not my place, but I resent being on them because it's just not adding any values to the founders at all, which is not cool. I think any board meeting that's not creating a change or adding marginal gains at the very least, I think is bad. So I struggle with that. Most VCs have never worked in a startup. So how, if you've never worked in a startup, can you advise an early stage founder how to build a startup? You can't. Well, you can pattern match to a degree. So you can look across the portfolio and books you've read and stuff, and you can pattern match and you can replay. And a lot of VCs do that, thinking that they are world class and they know everything, and they don't. And it's I've been on board meetings where founders have been given advice by other VCs, and I've just sat there going, that's bad. I mean, there's stuff that doesn't make any difference and it's kind of nihilistic, so what? And there's bad advice, there's bad things to do. That happens. So the 90-70, who knows whether, I think he's just making a play, and Sifted and TechCrunch will lap it up, right? But I would argue that many early stage investors are just not additive. They don't want to be. They're just not. They don't add any value, and that's obviously going to make up the 90. And those that are actively damaging, I don't think it's 70%. I think there are a number that try and do good. But a founder's job is to be the best filter in the world. So sometimes my best intentioned advice or support or frameworks are not going to work. And just because it's worked in the past doesn't mean that is going to work in the future for them in this scenario right now. So you could argue that the 70% adding negative value, that's the founder's fault. I mean, you shouldn't just listen and blindly follow. You should listen and listen and listen, and then be the best filter in the world and go, do you know what? I know what Dan was saying, but I don't agree. And I think this, and I'm going to do this in this way. And I'm all for being wrong. I love being wrong. I think a lot of the magic that happens in my industry is when I'm wrong, or when other investors are wrong. But most people will never admit that because we've got egos the size of planets. So I think his statement is fundamentally wrong. Bullshit in the bullshit bucket, but I think the essence of it is absolutely right.
Yeah, not every Not every investor makes a good board member. You mentioned the term board. What is the ideal role of a board in a company, in your opinion?
Solve problems. That's it. If you're not solving problems every single board meeting, it's wrong. Change it.
I mean, I can connect the quote from Vinod Khosla to my experience, especially with early stage companies with business angels, where everyone basically wants to be on wants to have a board role after they invested 5,000 euros in and claiming a board role.
Yeah. Can I have all the updates? Can I have a board seat? Can I have information rights? No, piss off.
So I very often said, not everyone who invests in a company needs to be on a board because it's not their function. It's providing.
I can't wait to sack myself from boards and find people that are more impressive. They're going to take the teams to the next stage. Most people want to hang on. So I just don't agree with it. And boards should never last. The board structure should never last more than a year. Every year, the board and the board structure should be challenged. Is this what we need for this next phase of growth? Are these the right people for this next phase of growth? And I'm super happy to be sacked.
This is something that is also my opinion. When I look at board, look at what's the board for, which people should be on a board. I would like to hear your opinion on that. I always said, look at the next goal of the company, look at the next milestone. You need people who already did that, and put these people on board who help straighten things out in the company, who help the founder straighten things out in the company. How would you structure a board?
I think the only fundamental structure that I would always apply is that the investors can never outpower the founding team. So if there's, you don't want to, in a board, especially in the early stage, to be too unwieldy. It cannot be too big. It can be 3-5 people, I think, maximum, maybe a fourth, but then obviously you've got that the voting oddness. I mean, the governance is incredibly important. Having a strong governance structure, even in early businesses, is hyper important. But the only structural thing I think that I would enforce is a balance between the investor and the founding team in voting rights. So there's an energy balance, and then having a third party as the third or fifth member, a non-exec or some form of character who's going to bring in the skill that, as you've mentioned, is going to get you to the next milestone. So have they built a SaaS business? Do they have a big network? Can they help you solve a specific problem? So I think balance, and then having that the magic source, that network piece, that money connector, that network connector, that problem solver. I think that's the only structural advice I would give to founding teams is that, and then just be rigorous that everything that you do for board should be no more than what you do for a management meeting. You should be producing no more content than you do just to run the business. And then make sure that every board meeting you're solving a problem. Even if it's just a marginal gain, that's fine. But every single time you bring something to the table, how do we? And there's got to be some form of executable something. It can't just be talking bullshit. It's got to be some form of, oh, I can action that, and I can filter on that, and I can do something with that. As long as you're doing that, I think you're fine.
Yeah, I have an agenda and a clear goal for a board meeting. It's not just chit-chatting.
Yeah. I'm on one at the moment, which is just chit chat and posturing and VCs being egos, and it's a shame.
I would like to use the last minutes of our conversation, since we were talking about bots and AI, to talk about OpenAI.
Yeah.
Mid-November, I was very surprised. I mean, OpenAI, in my opinion, was a winning company. They got Microsoft, they got two months to 100 million users. And I just thought, this is the next $1 trillion company, IPO somewhere, and Sam Altman and his board will make it. And then suddenly he got booted. How do you see the events that happened at OpenAI?
Well, I mean, it's an unusual beast for many reasons, insofar it was obviously set up as open source AI, non-profit, and to counter Google. And I mean, Sam Altman doesn't even have any shares in the business. He has no ownership in the mothership at all. So there's this kind of misalignment of what is an identity crisis in what OpenAI is. And then you had a board that served the original intent around open source AI and OpenAI. So if you have a board that's not good for function, and you have a misalignment in what the hell you stand for and what your purpose is, and open is now closed and for profit. You can never square that circle. So who knows what's going on behind closed doors? Maybe we'll never know, but it has to be in the camp of Sam, Ilya, others are trying to take the company in this direction. The board is hell-bent on that direction. There are challenges around safety and alignment. I mean, a lot of I'm not a safety and alignment AI expert, but I'm not a doomer. I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a second. I'm much more in Yann LeCun's count of AI doesn't have an intent to kill the human race. I mean, even a super intelligent AI, there's no malevolent requirement to then, twist your mustache and then kill all of humanity. It's why would a technology want to do that? So I'm not a doomer, but I do think there are questions to be answered around, we're on the edge of this general intelligence. So my sense is that there was pushes and pulls on alignment, and therefore the misalignment that's evident in the company and in the direction of the firm. And there was a board that wasn't fit for purpose. I think they're the only two things that create. I mean, what the hell do I know? I mean, I know nothing. I am an early stage VC from London. I'm not even in Silicon Valley, although I don't know what they are.
I mean, the advantage of early stage companies is they're not in the public eye. Basically, I mean,
yes.
When something happens, it doesn't really matter. You can write an email and that's done.
So true. And we are the definition of insider trading. I mean, we have all of the data because companies are private, right? So we know everything that's going on in our startup. So it's often a nice place to be when you're in the private markets.
When I think back to my time in public markets, in public companies, there was always a clear direction: negotiate behind closed doors. Yeah. And then there is one line of communication.
Yeah.
And everybody must have a shiny, happy face
and
tell the same story.
I would just want to blurt the truth. And go, I don't think I could function like that.
I mean, coming from that direction, I was very surprised about the communication that went out from OpenAI, where they simply said, we don't trust Sam Altman anymore.
Yeah.
And he said,
what a statement, right? That's a crazy statement.
Yeah.
He's become uncommunicative and untrustworthy or something like that. That's not. But
how can you do that?
But it's just a weird thing to say. I can understand them discussing the outcome of a thing, but not that he's lying and misleading. I mean, it's just, what did he lie and mislead about, or what's the outcome of? Is it a new strategy direction? I mean, that's just. Is it? I don't like you very much anymore. It's just a really weird. But then you're always going to have problems when you don't have an energetic connection with cash, and because Sam's has no ownership in the business. I don't understand how you can manage that energetically when I've got nothing. I don't own one share in this business. That just feels completely misaligned from the off.
Yeah, maybe something that needs fixing when they want to grow further. So that's they align the interests with at least stock options.
I think so. There has to be weights and measures, right? There has to be some kind of balancing act between I've got skin in the game. I mean, Sam Altman's a very wealthy man in his own right, but there has to be some form of, I think in the new board structure, I don't think Sam Altman's even on the board. I mean, it's just, how can you not have the leader of the company on the board? It's like, this is not going to, and Microsoft, I think, have got observer rights. So this isn't going to end well. This is not going to end well.
They have a lot of challenges ahead. I totally agree. Dan, I love the conversation with you, and I think we could go on another hour, but I want to value your time. One last question. When founders or investors listen to this episode, what piece of advice would you want to give them at the end of this call?
Founders and investors advice. I think it's a cheese ball one. It's a bit cheesy, but the next wave of commercial activity will be about making money and doing good and creating change. So it's maybe not advice, more of a statement, or more of a kind of a maxim or a request, which is make money and do good. Now, doing good doesn't mean saving all the babies or making malaria nets or curing AIDS. Do good can be in a multitude of ways. And it's more than just not being a dick. So we've moved on from don't be a dick to do some good. So whether you're a founder, do good. If you're an investor, invest in good, do good things, make the world a better place. And that's as cheeseball. I mean, it's cheesy, but I don't care. That's the reality.
That's a great statement. I think we have to work on that. Make the world a better place. Leave it
Yeah.
better than you found it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dan, thank you very much for this conversation. I enjoyed every single minute, and I'm sure we see each other on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And when you're in London, let me know.
I will. Dan, have a great day. Have a great weekend.
Cheers, dude. Take care.
Bye. You
Yeah,
too.
bye. 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 Bye.